Hi, this is Marlon with another video on my experiences with the Mevo camera. And I've owned the Mevo camera for about 6 months and have been using it in a live situation at a church. And I want to give you my top 5 issues that I've ran into and how I've solved those issues. The first one has to do with the camera's field of view. Now it has a very wide one and a somewhat narrow one. However, I found in my experience that the best location for the camera, depending upon the situation, is typically 10 to 15 feet from the performer. If it's someone speaking by themselves, I'll put it within 5 feet. If I need to capture maybe a stage that's maybe 30 feet wide, again, I might be going that 15 feet in front to try to get the left and the right. The Mevo only has a limited zoom. Unlike other cameras that have regular zoom and then a digital zoom, the Mevo limits what it can do. So if you're expecting the Mevo camera to be like this, you can set it way in the back where the audio booth is and then zoom in close if there's like a presenter or a speaker, it's really not going to work. It has to be up close front. So again, my solution is to put it 10 to 15 feet, even for our, I'm the one that speaks on Sunday morning. That camera is literally 12 inches from me and it seems to work fine. So put it close. That's how you solve the issue. And the great thing about the Mevo camera is that it's so small and it's so unobtrusive. I put it on top of a microphone stand. Many people just assume it's a microphone. The light's on and you can turn that off in the settings, but it's so nice and clean and small that it's not that big of an issue. So number one, again, is distance. You're going to have to make sure that it's close. The second issue has to do also with distance, and that is if you're going to be using the Mevo camera with an external audio source like the iRig 2, it's going to give you some issues where the mixer and the iPad or the iOS device has to be somewhat close to the mixer. Again, depending on how long a cable you want to run. In our setting, it's literally 6 to 10 feet away from the mixer. Again, you can do long cable runs, but you run into the issue of it looking ugly and it kind of being a trip hazard. So the issue is distance when you're using a mixer and an audio interface like the iRig 2 and the iOS device. They kind of have to be close to each other. So going back to the first one, if the camera has to be 10 to 15 feet, well then in somewhat the same issue, if you're going to be using, again, an external audio interface, you're looking at kind of being within a closer range, depending on how you set up your system. You could use submixers and long cables and other stuff like that, but you have to be aware of that. The third issue that I've had with Mevo, again, has to do with distance, but this time the distance is with the Bluetooth interface. Now the Mevo connects to your iOS device in 2 ways. It has to connect with the Bluetooth and it has to connect with some kind of Wi-Fi. Either you're connected to the same network or you're connected to the Mevo and the network that the Mevo creates. Now, the distance that you can run Bluetooth is really dependent upon your setting. I had one incident where I was in a large church. It sat, you could sit like 800 people, a very wide kind of amphitheater design. I was way in the back wall. The stage in front of me was probably 60 to 70 feet away, and the Mevo camera was right there, again, about 20 feet in front of the, it was a mass choir, so I had to get really wide. I had to try to get, 400 voices in that. So I had the Mevo set up there. The Mevo was streaming through my phone data plan. It was great. No issues. I'll leave a link if you want to watch that concert. Everything was great. The Mevo camera was working. I had the iRig 2. I had a shotgun mic in the back, and things were okay until the very end. At the end of the concert, the choir director asked the whole audience to stand up, and my Mevo and my iOS device, they were, in a straight line, again, about 70 feet from each other. But once everybody stood up, somehow, I think, it's my estimation, that they blocked that line that the Bluetooth signal was in there, and I lost my connection between my iOS device and the Mevo camera. Now the Mevo was still recording, but again, I lost the interface connection on my iPad. And so again, you'll have to be careful on how far you distance yourself from the iOS device and the camera. On Sunday mornings, we use a device, we're about 40 feet away, kind of half that. And we've had dropouts. And when the dropouts happen, I want to remind you that the Mevo camera still continues recording or streaming. If you lose your connection with your iOS device, you'll try to have to log in again, but it doesn't kill it. It keeps going. So that's one great thing about it. My number 4 issue with the Mevo camera happened recently at a graduation that I was not streaming, but I was using the camera to record the event. I was using it as part of another, I was using 2 cameras, but the Mevo camera, I had the iRig 2, I had a mixer, I was running audio. Again, all the distances were really short, like maybe 20 to 30 feet from the camera. And something happened, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I think something hiccuped in the audio, and it happened in a very important section. There was a girl's, she was singing a solo, and for about 3 seconds, the audio dropped out. So, a great recording. It was good. The girl was doing a wonderful solo, and on a very important part, the audio skipped and it dropped out, and then it came back in later. So that led me to believe that, it's a live situation, and one way to avoid losing something like that or losing audio is to have a redundancy built in your system. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but basically for me, I had a digital recorder. The next graduation, which was another day later, I had a secondary audio recording. So if that ever happened, I can simply replace the audio coming from the same mixer, going into the iRig 2. However, I had another output going into a digital recorder. And if anything happened, I can just replace that audio at a convenient place. So that was one issue that I had. Number 5, my last issue with the Mevo camera has to do with the battery life. Now, I do know that from Livestream, you can order a secondary auxiliary battery, and it's a big connection, and it actually allows you to do physical connection for streaming. But for many of us, just using the Mevo camera by itself, that's maybe you're on a tight budget. You think that we can get away with that. Well, I found out that for me, expecting more than an hour of live streaming from the Mevo camera is probably, putting you on the edge where you might lose something, especially if your event goes over. So this is what we've chosen to do. We've got a power bank by Anchor, and we connected, and it works great. So we haven't had much issues. But again, we had to buy a secondary electrical source to make sure that in case our events went over, we would not lose things. So those are my top 5 issues that I've had with the Mevo camera. Some of the solutions, and if you have any questions, please email me or leave a comment. I'd like to help you. I like the Mevo camera. I'm still using it, and in the next coming videos, I'll be showing you different ways to use it and to make sure that you get the best out of it.